Digital 410 Productions proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast with your hosts Dodd Abernathy, Jeff Copsetta, and Henry Sledge.
I've gotten in some pretty good arguments with other reenactors because, and reenactors can take this for what it's worth, and I'm going to say it because this is my passion, and I live for the field kitchen. Is if you're going to do it, you strive for 100%, and we know because we call ourselves living historians, and the reason I say living historians instead of using the word reenactor, a reenactor to some degree, and it's a large group of them, will only take their impression only so far, and that's where it stops. They don't do research every day like we do. They only live from one reenactment to another one, where we live at 365 days a year. We're constantly researching photos, manuals, videos from World War II. We talk to the veterans that were cooks in World War II. We get their pictures, their stories. We read anything that we can get on the mess halls and the supplies for the food. And we make our own labels. We make a lot of the stuff we make ourselves. And so, to me, we strive for 100%, knowing that we never probably will get to an exact 100%, but we're always striving, because when you stop striving for 100%, you start going backwards.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II podcast. And sadly, that was a clip from episode 46 featuring Brian Cookie Vineyard. He was a member of the Tri-State Living History Association who specialized in authentic error-correct field kitchens, but I think one Jeff Copsetta would be more poignant to talk a little more about that. How you doing, Jeff?
Yeah, good. It's tough to start what's going to be a great episode that way, but I'm glad that we got to do it. Yeah, Byron was, or affectionately known as Cookie, was just what an incredible guy. I'm so glad that you got to travel to meet him. I know his son very well. His son is a really good friend of mine, and his son is a great living historian in his own right. Been in the museum field for a while and marketing, and that guy, he's jumped into Normandy. I think back, I want to say for the 65th. I'm not exactly sure. It's been some time now, probably 10 or so years. But his son Brandon's just like I said, a real good buddy of mine. When I heard that his dad had finally had passed, was, we kind of saw it coming. It was not like a shocker. I talked to Brandon right before Christmas, and he said, it's within weeks. So that's tough.
Yeah.
Anytime you lose somebody like that, lose a parent, and the living history world, really, it's a big hole, because Cookie would set up one incredibly complete field kitchen, every ingredient, everything authentic for everything that he would cook. And he'd set up, up there in Illinois. He brought his camp down to Texas a couple times for us. I mean, just an incredible, just what a production. And it just lends so much more realism. Those things that we strive for. Your uniform can be great, everything, everything, and then you go and get a cheeseburger from somewhere.
Yeah, right.
It's not the same. It's not the same. But when you were in a chow line and you're handed a tray or a canteen cup and a spoon, and you go through and they slop it on there,
yep,
and you shovel it down, and then you're dumping in the water and the hot water and the soap, scrubbing it out, hanging it up. It was a regular field kitchen, like we were just pulled off the line, and it's just an incredible guy. I'm just so happy I got to meet him and learn from him. And Don, I'm so happy that you got to do the same, and we can immortalize him here on our podcast.
And in that interview, he took great pride in the fact that they were one of the few outfits that didn't upgrade their field stoves to propane. He still used gasoline, and he took great pride in that. But what we're going to do, we're going to make this a 2-part episode for the download, not on YouTube, but download. So once you guys listen to this fantastic normal episode of part 1, part 2, because Byron's original interview was a part of a 2-part episode, meaning we had 2 guests on that. And so what I've done is isolated his full interview. And so when you go on your podcast app, you'll see the episode for tonight, episode 106, part 1 and part 2. that full interview with Byron will be part 2. And so please enjoy that interview and give him a little bit of remembrance. But we're happy to announce, on lighter note, one Henry Sledge went out of his way like he always does. The book is a fantastic guest. And so, Henry, if you wouldn't mind introducing to our friends on YouTube
good evening,
and
everybody.
And everywhere else.
Glad to be here. I want to welcome our guest tonight. It's Paul Woodage of World War II TV, a very good friend of mine. Paul is a prolific YouTuber. He is a battlefield guide. He's a historian. He's an author, and he lives in Normandy, just a short drive from the D-Day beaches. And I've got to say, I've watched many episodes of World War II TV, in addition to the one that I was honored to be a guest on. But Paul, I love what you are doing for as you've got a word out there that I love to use now, the historiography of World War II. And I love what you do. I mean, you get granular with these things. You have these guests on, Saul David and John McManus, Brian Dimitrovich. You've got some fantastic content, and it's something I never get tired of watching. And I'm always talking it up to these guys, and I'm just super excited to have you here on What's the Scuttlebutt.
Well, cheers. That's a pretty cool introduction. That was good. Yeah, no, it's really happy to be here.
Thank you for taking your time and coming out.
No problem at all.
So World War II TV, did that start for you, Paul, when COVID shut everything down? I mean, it seems like I've heard you say that.
Yeah. No, I was, I've been living in Normandy for 20 years, and I'm a guide. My other half is a guide. All my mates here are battlefield guides, and COVID just ripped everything out of the industry. Sure. We knew that our industry was very dependent on American visitors, but we didn't know how important it was until they stopped coming, and we just had nothing to do. And broadly speaking, there's the two groups of people I know here in Normandy: those that have just kind of gone kind of hibernated and just try to do something else, and maybe taken a second job or go back to something I did years ago, and others who've carried on doing something else. They've been writing or speaking or lecturing, and in my case I thought, okay, I know these people, these historians, what can I do? And I started with a live show on June the 6th. That was 2020. So I did a 17-hour live stream. I just sat here on my computer for 17 hours with just one or two pee breaks. Basically, historians dialed in every now and then, and I had people out with their phones taking footage from the beaches, and it was really ragged and really rough around the edges, and we lost the last few hours of it because YouTube stopped recording it. For some reason. I didn't know YouTube stopped after 12 hours or something. They do anyway.
Well,
it was fantastic.
I wonder what the world record is for longest live stream.
Well, if it's more than I did, that I'm never going to do it again. I mean, that's one of the things I would. I'm not going to try that again. It was really great, but towards the end, I was just, I don't know. I had a couple of guests on, and I was using friends at the end. I mean, it was most friends all the time, but I don't know what I was talking about the last hour or so. I had people say, "You were just on," all over the place. So, well, okay, fine, but it was an experience, and then I just put it into, okay, let's do this on a more kind of evening by evening basis, and I get people telling me, "Oh, you planned it really well, this whole thing." I didn't plan anything. Everything was accidental. Everything was one thing led to something else. And,
very spontaneous.
Yeah, now it feels like it's got a bit more planning, and now I plan. But when I started a year and a half ago, I've done over 400 live streams. So I'm doing pretty much three out of every 4 days. I'm doing something.
How do you keep your content fresh? I mean, because we do this once a week. I have another podcast, so I'm doing 2 podcasts twice a week. Once a week, different content though. Obviously, there's a lot of World War II stuff, but one's knowledge base is only so big, and when you're doing 3 of them a week, unless you're having guests on who do, who have expansive knowledge in other areas, how do you not burn through your content so quick?
Well, you said it yourself. I bring people on who know their subject, and people say, "Oh, people call me Woody. You know a lot, Woody." I say, "Well, I know a bit. I know a bit about a lot of things, and I'm able to kind of host it and get away with pretending I know a lot." But I just bring, if I can, it sounds arrogant, the best of the best on. So if I'm tackling Eastern Front Week, for example, I bring on authors who have done 5, 6, 7 books each, and I think, well, I can't get better than that. And it started off because I was lucky enough to have a few people that I knew for years. People like John McManus, you mentioned there, Alex Kershaw, James Holland, the British author. I'd known those guys for years. So I went with mates first. And I also went with Normandy first, my backyard, literally, as you said, I'm 15 minutes drive from Omaha Beach. And then I broadened sideways into Eastern Front, Pacific, things like that as well. And I get people saying, are you going to run out of ideas to do? Just to yesterday now, I was sitting on my Word document putting up ideas. And for just one of my theme weeks, because I try and break things down into sort of 4 or 5 shows in a theme, I had 20 ideas for 1 week. Now, few of them won't happen. And that's, I must be thinking sort of 6 months, 9 months ahead now. So, I mean, I've got so many ideas, and each thing leads to something else. That's the thing.
The thing I've got to say, I mean, you said it yourself, Woody, you're an ETO guy. You live in Normandy. That's your bread and butter. But when you step out of that box to go, okay, now I'm going to go PTO. I mean, the things that you're doing, I mean, the shows with, was it Michael Veach with Milne Bay and Carl James, Philip Bradley, the D-Day show in New Guinea. I mean, love the show on Rabaul, also with Philip Bradley.
Yep.
You know, and I'm just sitting there going, God, yes, thank you. Please give me another show like this. I mean, you're taking it. We've all seen the old tired archival footage many times, but you're taking it layers below that and getting granular with it with these authors who, as you say, really know their stuff. And I mean, I think it's just driving a whole new direction for World War II for the consumption of this subject.
Well, thank you. I mean, the thing is, it's not getting massive viewing numbers. I mean, it's still fairly early days with how YouTube works. But, you know, I'm talking about a subject for 2 hours. I mean, the show I did earlier today was about armored development in the Spanish Civil War. So I actually kind of broke my own rule and I talked about something non-World War II. But the whole point was it was about what lessons were learned.
Right.
And Pete, the guest, came on, and so we went through what was the Spanish Civil War, how was it fought, then a whole bit about the battle and, you know, tanks going into a city and anti-tank gunfire, blah, blah, blah. And the last bit was the breakdown of what did each country learn from this. How did the Soviets take this and move it forward? The Germans, we even looked at what the Japanese army military had done. They weren't participating, but they had people reading reports. So only a certain type of person will go for 2 hours. I was interested, you know, your introduction there to your friend who you lost, Living History. You know, you could spend, if you want, 3 hours looking at what kind of spoons were issued in 1941 and what kind of spoons were issued in 1944 and find out the ratio of which pattern was what. Some people won't care, but some will. But it's whether or not the will who do care is a big enough audience, if you like, to generate things. So, you know, I know full well, because YouTube tells me that I should be doing 10-minute videos with animations and explosions and covering everything. And it's just not what I want to do. I want to do deep dives, but it means you leave a few people behind because you're going deeper than they want to go.
Well, two things. One, early on in this podcast, I did an 1.5 hour long episode on the M1 helmet, so I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And two, when it comes to YouTube, there's just so much other competition, quote unquote, even if it's not just to get likes. People watch your video who never subscribe to your channel. It's insane because, you know, we struggle with that too. And, you know, not to go off, but to put in perspective, during COVID, I got on TikTok to see what my 13-year-old daughter was up to. And then I started posting videos. I've been on TikTok for a year and a half. I got 10,000 viewers, subscribers. I've been on YouTube forever and we're struggling to get to 1,000. So, I mean, I completely understand. It's just so weird. And off the air, I'll give you another option that you can actually copy your YouTube links to put up on a very similar website that actually we get more views on. It's called the Utah Gun Exchange or YouTube. And basically they launched when YouTube demonetized videos about firearms. And so they launched it. And so basically every time I post a video on YouTube, I'll copy the link, go to that website, and it'll import it automatically with all the same hashtags. And I actually get more views over there because that demographic's more into what we talk about. And so that's always an option too. But going back to what you're saying real quick, not to go too far back, you doing your first episode, you said you're doing a live stream and every once in a while a mate would call in or someone would go out. I don't think people realize how hard it is to sit in a room by yourself and maintain a conversation while you're waiting for your mates to call in or waiting for them to set up that live stream. I did radio for 6 years, and when I first started this podcast, I would only do an episode when I had a guest to talk to, because it is so hard to sit in a room by yourself, carry on a conversation like you're schizophrenic with yourself, and make it sound like to the listening audience that you're talking to them, which is why I have a Jeff and a Henry, because it's just easier to do a show, and they have a lot more knowledge than I do. And so for you to do that straight out the gate as your first one, and be able to do the traffic copying while waiting for people to come in, that's a huge testament to you and your knowledge base.
Well, it's also because I still call myself a battlefield guide. I'm kind of hoping I won't have to go back into doing that except when I want to. But as a battlefield guide, you're there in front of your audience for 9 hours. It's not,
Right.
You've got to keep their attention for all that time. Sure, you're driving during the course of it and you're stopping for lunch, but you've got to keep them interested, and you've got to keep a variety of people interested, because people think if you're a battlefield tour guide, every family you get is someone like Henry, who's retracing their family's footsteps, who they think this is the most incredible thing they've ever done. And there's a lot of that, but a lot of people are just ticking it off a list. They're just
Sure.
They've done Rome, and they've done what they're in Venice and Leaning Tower of Pisa. Now they're doing Normandy. Normandy particularly is the worst place, the worst battlefield in the world for people who are just ticking it off a list. And that's me being kind of negative and cynical. And they are the people who pay our wages, because we get 1.5 million people come to Normandy a year.
Why do you think that is, Woody? I mean, because you can't just drive through. Oh, there, they came ashore there. Boom, now we've done it. Let's go on to Paris or whatever. Is it just... Like, I watched the show where you had one of your people out driving around. You went to some different churches. You had somebody who'd been in an armored unit. Sorry, but I can't remember exactly which show it was. But I mean, I was just like, this is incredible, the level of detail that you're going into. But to my question, though, why do you think Normandy is like the worst battlefield for the people who just want to do a quick check the box?
Because it's the one people can name, isn't it? You go into a street in London, Sydney, Milwaukee, whatever, and say, name a battle from history. If they've got any battle in their head, yep, D-Day is going to be one of them. Gettysburg, maybe, Iwo Jima, and you start, you said that you're very nice to compliment on shows like Milne Bay, and we did one on the Romanian and the SS fighting in the streets under Odessa. It's fairly niche stuff, but D-Day, D-Day has become a word in our language. You'll read in the newspaper, a politician is facing their D-Day. That people will make storming the beaches analogies. It's just part of our frame.
It's become its own brand.
Yeah, and of course we have to acknowledge the incredible power of Saving Private Ryan and Band of Brothers, and the imagery of things like Bill Clinton for the 50th walking down the beach, putting the stones there, which was set up, by the way. Those stones were set there for him to find, and he put them in a cross shape. And Reagan's speech the 10 years before, the 40th, was important as well. Which brings it, when you talk about historiography, we can now look at the historiography of visits to Normandy. We've got enough back history. We can look at how people were visiting 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and how they're visiting now, and look at the changes. So Normandy is always going to be that kind of place, whether we like it or not.
Well, I kind of have a thought or an idea of what you're going to say, but prior to COVID hitting and basically knocking the wind out of the sails of the battlefield guide industry, I probably would say the answer is going to be yes, but I'll let you answer. In your view, just probably because it happened on those shores, do you think the average Norman counterpart to American has more knowledge and interest in history of World War II, or are they just kind of over it because it's always been there in the background?
Oh, they definitely have the interest, because you can't live here without going past a cemetery on your way to work, or past a tank or a monument. I mean, we haven't even counted the monuments here in Normandy, but it's thousands. It's. I drive past a Churchill, a Hetzer, and a Sherman and a Hellcat every time I go to do my shopping. So that's just how it is here. That isn't to say that everybody is mad keen interested in it. People know about it, but don't really care. And that doesn't mean they don't care about the loss. They'll come out once a year and do their ceremony, but it's not. They don't live and breathe it.
Sure.
But they just know about it here. That's just how it is.
Back to the when you got started on your World War II TV, Up to now, are you just a one-man crew, or do you got a producer and someone help you booking people, or are you just doing it all on your own?
All me. Yeah.
To do 3 shows a week, that's tremendous.
It's normally 5 a week, sometimes 6.
Wow.
Occasionally 7. And I always do them live because I'm lazy, and live means no editing. Because you guys know, you get stuck in editing hell.
Oh yeah.
Live is good because it stands and falls. When I press end stream, my only little job to do 10 minutes later is add the little thumbnails to the end of the video and check and monetize it, check all that kind of thing. But it's done. Occasionally I have a guest who doesn't want to go live, and I record it, and then I put it up. But it takes me 4 or 5 times longer that way.
And I get that
because I start editing out the and making it a bit slicker, and it also loses something. I've got a community now who love jumping in and making comments and saying, ask the historian this, because they've got access to the people.
And you involve that as you're watching the show. I mean, so and so is asking the question about, I mean, that's a constant thing I see you doing.
Yeah, and it's getting to the point where it's starting to get a bit unwieldy now. Last 6 weeks, 2 months or so, I saw an increase in viewers, which is great, and I've been waiting for it, and it's going up now. But it's just meaning that the sidebar can get a little bit unruly, because I'm hosting, so I'm thinking about what I'm saying next and what I'm going to ask next. I'm often moving the PowerPoint images on as well, and loading up video, and I'm answering questions coming in, and getting rid of people, the bots and things like that join.
I hate to say this, but you're getting to the point where you're going to need a producer. It's going to happen sooner or later. The bots are the worst. The few times we've had people come in our live stream, it's just insanity, just nonsense they're posting. You got to try to do all the things you're doing, the traffic copy, to maintain the conversation while deleting obscenities out of the chat. It's a lot of work, and
I expect I will need to find someone, and that will be a real hurdle for me, because it's not. Control freak sounds like I'm some really weird person. I'm not. I just like knowing how I do things.
Sure.
My other half, I'm in France, and my other half, who's also a tour guide, she says I could apply because I've got a business for someone to help with the video editing side of things and the social media and put things up on Instagram or whatever. But I'd have to watch everything they do, because I would say, well, I'm doing a show about Peleliu, find me 4 Peleliu images, but I'd have to check that they find me 4 Peleliu images, not 2 Peleliu ones, and one for me regime and one, because they don't know how to discern those things there, and they would spell armor the American way when I wanted it spelled the British way, or whatever it would be. So I'd end up doing all the work anyway. I'd end up checking everything. So I might as well do it myself.
And you're talking about, using your skills as a battlefield guide to maintain that consistent information flow. That's kind of the reasons why early on I would interview reenactors and living historians, because living historians more than reenactors, because living historians, they set up their displays, and Jeff and I have often joke around that a living history event is kind of like a tech show or a car show, where you're walking around and you have the people working for the car companies, and they're regurgitating their well-practiced speech about their products. And living historians are the same way. You got the guy set up in front of the communication tent. He has given a speech about the field phone 475 times. And so when they come on a podcast and you talk about that stuff, it minimizes the ands, the ums, and the stuttering, because they're just regurgitating that thing that they talk about every weekend on the summer anyhow. And so it really helps to present the information in a well-rehearsed, well-polished way.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I like, in a weird paradoxical way, I like it sometimes when a few of my guests aren't as natural and slick as some others. Because if I bring on James Holland, for example, who is just an internationally renowned historian, does his own TV, he just puts the show on. He's just Vegas in terms of his quality, and he's slick, and he doesn't even have to prep for them. It just comes out. I had Adam Tooze on, the economist who wrote Wages of Destruction, one of my favorite books about the Third Reich. He was just riffing. He was on his phone, walking around his living room, no preparation. Out of this, his head is this data coming out, and that's fantastic. But I do like having the more amateur guy who just has spent 20 years manning a website or doing living history. I used to do living history myself years ago. I gave up, and maybe they're not as polished. And I have to maybe tease a bit more out of them, and I have to be a bit more showy to kind of bring them in. And I like that, because it means people will contact me and they don't feel they have to be an experienced TV talking head to come and talk. I had an email today from someone who's a firefighter in the US who spent 20 years researching German firefighters putting out bombing. And you could sense by his email he was a bit nervous about contacting me because he isn't Peter Caddick Adams. He's not John McManus. He's not got PhD after his name. He's not lecturer at West Point or something. But I'm glad they will bother to contact me and feel that I will give them a chance. It's because some of the shows I do are not quite as slick as others, because the guest is knowledge first, interpreting, I can't get the word out, interpretation skills second, if you know what I mean.
And to that point, and then I'll let Henry get in here. To that point, some of those guests that are so well rehearsed, and we've had this a few times, you pull that string and they start going, and then they hit a point you want to follow up, but they keep going and going and going. And so by the time they put that breath in, you almost got to circle the podcast back 5 minutes to get back to that point that you want to cover because they're so well rehearsed that they're just going 5 miles a minute.
And you have to get to the point where you're a little bit controlling of it, and you kind of jump in and say, I'm going to interrupt you now. And Peter Caddick Adams, who's a prolific historian, will just talk and questions to him that you've got, like, it just doesn't matter. He's riffing now, and it's great.
The great Peter Caddick Adams moment was in the show after the Bulge, but where Mr. Bohr came in, his dog.
Yeah.
He's out for a walk. Here he is, Mr. Bohr. That was awesome. I love
and he throws in these things that you're not expecting. Because Peter Caddick, I'm working class English. I wear a newsboy cap. I grew up in Essex, just outside of London. I like rockabilly music and punk music, and I'm working class all the way. Peter Caddick Adams wears tweed and red corduroy trousers and
patches on his
expensive
elbow,
shoes from London, and he's posh. He's from that part of the world, and yet he'll talk about reading on the show he did in the Ardennes week. He was talking about reading Whitney Houston's autobiography, which I didn't see that coming my way.
You were like mind blown.
Whoa, yeah, mind blown, because you think he's going to be sitting kind of with a pipe reading very learned logistical reports about the British Army in 1943, and he's actually reading a Whitney Houston book. And when he did a fellow friends of mine Fighting on Film podcast where they discuss war movies, he did about the best oddball from Kelly's Heroes impression I've ever heard. Now, I hadn't seen that coming from Peter Caddick Adams, that he would do a woof woof, that's my other dog. That was brilliant,
I wouldn't have seen that coming from him either.
But it's got to the point now where these guys, even the big name historians, they like coming on my channel. And this sounds like I'm really showing off and stuff. Now, Damian Lewis, that's the author Damian Lewis, not Dick Winter's Damian Lewis. Right. The first time he did a show, I was contacting him via his agent or his publicity assistant or something. And they were saying he's not going to give away all the plots of it, the details of his book, because he doesn't want to damage his book sales. And by the third appearance, he just tells all the story because he loves it. I got an email, I think, after the second show saying he did two PR gigs the same day. One was one of those generic. He went on, BBC Radio 4, and someone said, "So your book is about," checks notes, the SAS in 1944. And the audience, the interviewer didn't know what they were talking about, and it was 3 minutes. And then he came on with me, and he can talk, and he will say things like, the thing is, what to ask, Woody, because you understand. You understand the uniforms, you understand the units. And Sol David, who you mentioned, did the same thing. He said, I like coming on because, you ask cool things, and the conversation will go into slightly unpredictable areas, which is cool. So, I enjoy it. And it seems to be working quite well.
Yeah, I've seen that with authors in the past too. Once again, I worked in radio, and so in radio, the production house, they just want to get the name out there and get on the radio. And so the radio host will get what's called a one-sheeter, have the name of the book, the name of the author, some titles, in 2 sentences, and it's a very stilted, very boring interview. And so a lot of times, especially when you first start a podcast or a channel and you're trying to book these guests and they don't know about you and they don't know about your podcast, they come on expecting that whole radio format off the one-sheeter. And then when you start diving in, you can, after about a minute or two, you see them kind of relax and say, okay, I'm around someone who's like-minded and I can settle in and we can go a little deeper. And next thing you know, you're 110 minutes into it and you're like, okay, I guess we'll call it quits and we'll follow up. But it's definitely interesting to see when people come in with a kind of an expectation because they just don't know, and then you just see them kind of fall into it, which is always
Well,
fun.
yeah. I mean, that's a great point. It kind of seemed that way when John was on our show.
Sure, he didn't
at
know
first
us
he's
from
like,
Adam.
oh, okay, guys, what do you want to talk about? And then he very quickly saw, hey, man, here are three guys, which, I mean, John McManus obviously knew who my father was and all that, but he very quickly realized, man, here's three guys who have a passion for World War II history. They're well-read. It didn't hurt that we certainly had read a number of his books, and it just turned into this fantastic conversation.
Yeah, and it's good. The downside I'm getting, though, is if it's someone like John McManus who comes on who's a mate, we can go a bit informal. And I forget sometimes that people will not just watch the show live, they'll go back and watch it again. They'll put some automatically generated subtitles on, and they'll maybe overanalyze a sentence. It happened with a show John did, and I forget what, it was where John said something about putting the European theatre as a priority over the Pacific theatre, and I would have done the same or something, he said. Mm-hmm. And this the commentator said, would you really do that? Is that really John's opinion? And I was kind of trying to say, well, it was just a throwaway comment in a show. Right. I think that is John's honest opinion, but maybe he would have worded it slightly different, and I would have worded it slightly different. So people will overanalyze a little bit, thinking that it's a highly scripted documentary, and it's not a highly scripted documentary. It's a live show where we're talking and we're engaging and we're dealing with live comments. But on the whole, people are really good and really receptive to it. But I feel if it gets a bit bigger and people perhaps don't know who I am or don't know who the guests are, they will maybe kind of pick up things, or that was odd language you used there for that. And it's sometimes the tonal shift can be odd. You must have the same thing where you're talking about death and then suddenly something kind of humorous comes up, and it's like, oh, we've got to change tone now, like the radio, and you play a wacky record and then you go to the news where there's been a car wreck in the town. You've got to know how to kind of move that change and tonal change and then bring it back again. But if I overthink it, it probably would not work. It's just kind of go with your gut, I think, is the idea with it.
And back to that comment that the listener was picking apart. To be honest, I think at least in the living historian world, and we've actually said that same comment here, which is true. If you turn on a History Channel back when they actually showed history, or you go somewhere that has a series of videos, up until the last 5 years, 89.7 of them are ETO based. You might see a North African video and a small handful of PTO. And so for the longest time, up until, the Pacific came out in the last few years, most of at least the production on TV that was readily available to anybody with a cable box, it was primarily ETO. And so a lot of people do have that feeling that up until recently, that was where all the priority was. And so what he said was by no means out of balance. It's just someone tried to make it into something it's not.
Right.
But we're in a revolution now, in that we are now, as consumers, assuming we can have some kind of contact with the creators. Mm-hmm. Now, when I was a kid watching World War II documentaries, you didn't think you'd ever be able to comment about, why didn't you talk about this? But, I get these long, sprawling, detail-laden comments where people, and I'm not sure whether they're kind of criticizing or complimenting, but they're just adding the stuff they know. They're saying, here's more shit on this, they say, that you may want, and that's fantastic. And the fact they feel they can be part of the process, and it's that kind of talent show thing, is that you feel that you're part of it because you can vote. You can vote your telephone call for your act you like. It's participation led. And I've also found, talking to authors and things, the COVID revolution is they're finding that the audience who are reading their books isn't just the people they thought were reading their books. There's a whole other demographic as well, which they're now finding because their exposure to their audience, the Brits again particularly, was they'd go to the Chelsea Literary Festival in London, where you meet the kind of people who go to the Chelsea Literary Festival, who are people who have handmade shoes that cost 500 quid, and and that's the people they were meeting. And single mums from Detroit are listening to their stuff and their podcasts as well, and that kind of thing. And they're realizing, there's the people reading their books is wider than they thought. And also this connects with the fact that we're all of us. You said about history, when History Channel used to show history. If we judged what we thought people know by what conventional TV gives us, we think the world is full of idiots, because they dumb everything down to such a point that they're reminding you that, and the bad guys here, folks, are the Germans. And we had these things, they were green, they were called tanks. It's that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And these brilliant talking heads go on, and they're reduced to giving sound bites because no one's allowing them to give any detail. And that's, I think, even the authors have realized, well, that must be what the viewership is like, because if that's what the big companies are making, they must know what they're doing. And then you realize with podcasts and my channel and other people's that actually there's a huge level of knowledge out there. And those people out there really know their stuff. They know their uniforms, they know their equipment, and they know their battles, and they want it to be explored in a detailed way.
It's so funny because the legacy media, they're so stuck in their ways. I've been out of radio for 3 years, but in the 6 years I worked there, the station flipped formats multiple times, but the talk show I produced always stuck around because those two guys have been on the same station since the late 90s. But it's so funny. They would hire these music consultants to come in and tell you what the audience wants to hear. And I said, well, there's no room for talk. It's like, really? Because there's like 300,000 podcasts out there and they're all talk based. You're a music consultant. Obviously, you're going to say everybody wants to hear music. And like you said, and I'm sure Henry's experienced this and Jeff's experienced this, you'll be asked to come, whether it's a local news story or a radio segment, and they'll interview you for 20 minutes, and then they'll use 38 seconds of that entire interview on their 3-minute break going into the weather or whatever. And so, it's definitely compressed and definitely dumbed down.
Yeah, the big TV gig I got, conventional TV, was for D-Day 70. So, and it was down to it was an American-made show, and John McManus has been it, Marty Morgan, various other people you'd know, and apparently it was down to me and a very well-known British historian I haven't mentioned so far, and I got the gig because I was free and he wanted too much money, and they sent the crew over to Normandy, and they interviewed a German historian as well while we're here. And I was kind of excited about it because it was I've done lots of TV work as a consultant behind the scenes, and the occasional kind of guiding the presenter through places in Normandy. But this was me, like I am now, facing the camera, responding to stuff. So I was kind of excited about it. They booked me like 6 months in advance. And then a week before the recording, I got the answers to the questions I was supposed to be given sent to me. And it was like my world went, it was like, what? Don't I get to say what I think? No, you kind of got to stick to our already worked out script. And it was like, oh,
that's because the guy asking
balloon burst. And
that's because the guy asking the question doesn't know anything on the topic, and so he's got to send you the pre-thought out questions. Otherwise, he can't maintain that conversation.
But I can get the questions, but in fact, I was given the answers. I was told what to, and in the end, they didn't use me that much because I wouldn't stick to it because they wanted to. For example, when we were talking about the fighting inland, they said. Like because they let me record, they did a few things, kind of just me saying it, and then they said, "Oh no, they do it more this way." And I was talking about, I don't know, I think something about engaging Stugs and Panzer IVs and French tanks, Marders and stuff. And they said, "You haven't mentioned Tigers yet." So, well, Americans don't come up against Tigers for like the first 2 months of the Normandy campaign. It was all Stugs and SPGs and like, yeah, but our audience know Tigers. I said, well, can't bring Tigers in because there weren't any. So I'm going to say Stug because that's what they were here. And he said, you mentioned too many different towns. Can you just stick to Saint-Lô? I said, well...
Saint-Lô and Saint-Marguerite, that's
and,
it.
I could go on about this, but, and in the end, here I am making my own stuff now, and who cares what the conventional TV is doing? And indeed, historians are leaving conventional TV in their droves. A big World War II show just aired on Netflix recently, and some of the talking heads are already talking on Twitter saying that's it, no more talking head work like this. And if I can't be involved in the finished product, I'm not doing it anymore. No money is worth, connecting yourself with something that isn't of the vision you thought it was going to be. So it's good for people like us, because I think these people will be desperately banging down our doors to try and get on our content because they'll want to have a voice and share what they actually know, not what they're told to say.
Well, it's a good example of how we will consume World War II history.
Yeah.
Instead of just the stock archival footage and then interview with a couple of people, it's going to be people coming to the party who really know their stuff, people who can appreciate somebody like a Carl James or John McManus or Peter Caddick Adams. I mean, and who are going to be familiar with their work.
Yeah, no, definitely. And accepting the fact, as we move forward, we're going to be getting our history from more than just one source. And the historians who dismiss video games and reenactment and comics and all those, they're missing out. You know, I mean, I'm interesting about living history at the top of the show there. I'm doing a week about living history reenactment, and of all the weeks I've done, it will be the most controversial because historians fall in two distinct categories when it comes to reenactment: those that think it's quite cool and those that think it's a disgraceful, disrespectful, you know. And I'm going to try and balance and fight my way through that to kind of offer different ideas on it. And reenactors are very wary to be part of something because they've done stuff in the past where they've been made fools of. And so but I thought, well, it needs to be done because as many people will have access. One of those big events, the D-Day one is it in Ohio?
Connie at Ohio.
More people will go to that than will buy a book by a mainstream historian, because not your James Hollands, your John McManus's, but your regular kind of in Britain pen and sword kind of military book. If people knew how few copies of those books were printed in the first run, they would be really, really surprised. It's barely over 1,000, most of these things there. And if they sell them all in the first year, they've done really well. But a reenactment event, 20,000 people might go, 50,000 people might go to a big one. So, and then TV, a wide audience again. So that's where people are going to get their history from. And that's where that's going to be their first entry to understanding what the war was. It might be at those kind of parades they do in a town for Memorial Day or something where a half track goes by. That might be for Joe Bloggs on the street there, the first time someone has tried to bring World War II to him. Movies on TV as well. But that will be that chat he has with the guy who's driving the half track. That will make or break whether he's got interest in World War II.
Do you think people, and I hope what you'll say, because I feel pretty strongly about this, and I'd be interested in knowing Jeff and Don's thoughts on it too, but do you think that people will continue to read books? Because I had a conversation with aviation historian Bruce Gamble, a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And I asked him, I've read several of his books. He wrote what I think is the best book that's ever been written on VMF 214, The Black Sheep. And I asked him, are you working on anything new? And this is all via email. And he said, well, I've pitched a book. Numbers don't look good from what my agent's telling me. So I'm kind of thinking about doing some video stuff, probably Woody, kind of like what you're doing. But I said to him, Bruce, I implore you, don't ever stop wanting to write a book, because I said and we actually talked about your show. And I said, you look at the way people consume the historiography of World War II now, there's got to be a subject matter expert, a guy who's written a book as part of that show, I think, to really round it out. So I was imploring him to not give up on the idea of writing, long form narrative books. And so, I mean, I want to believe that there will always be a place, certainly what we're doing here and what you do, and all of these is what Draken FL does. That's going to be a huge way that we consume history. But I really fervently hope there's always going to be that guy writing the book who can appear on those shows and be part of it. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think we will still read books, yeah, but I think the people who are writing books will have to go forward on an Eisenhower broad front strategy of accepting that if they're doing books, they'll have to do a blog and use social media and go on YouTube and do other things as well, because writing a book alone, the problem is you won't get out there. You won't, there's no point you doing a book if no one reads it. And some of the publishers will have to up their game as well. One of my guests last week on The Rise of the Third Reich, Helen Roche, did a fantastic book about the Third Reich schools, the Napolas, they called them.
I watched it today.
Yeah, and her book was published by a university, and it's about $100 because it's hardback. Who's going to buy it?
Nobody.
She knows this herself. We're trying to get her enough people saying that they would get a paperback edition, so we can actually, as my channel in a small way, influence her publisher. So the publisher go, actually, let's do a $20 paperback version, maybe with not the illustrations in, because you can maybe, if you don't want to put the photos in, you can have a link to the website where the photos are. That's why I think that it'll be moving on that kind of force. So someone like Bruce Gamble, for example, he may do the book, but then he'll say, okay, but here's the first part of the course is in for you to learn this is in the book, but also here's the website where the extra materials are. Here's the clips to the where you can see the footage of the whatever it is, the Avengers taking off the deck of so-and-so's and all that kind of stuff. So that's how it'll work, because there will be people, my own stepdaughters including them, their primary use of getting information is not books, it's
Right.
the internet, and they're very
And
skilled
video
at doing
games.
it. So books will have to be part of it, but they will have to be part of everything. And the old kind of the guy who sits in his office doing a book, not meeting anybody, submitting it to his publisher, who churn it out once every year, that's going to change. That is definitely not going to be the way forward. So you know, it's a yes and a no to your question.
Yeah, but what it says to me and what I see with younger people, you know, when I see through my son's, my 13-year-old, I don't think the passion for World War II is going anywhere. I think it's solid. I think it's there. And you know, I see that with the people who watch your show, the people that enjoy our podcast. I mean, I think there is going to be that desire and that interest for a connection to World War II.
Thoughts,
Absolutely.
Jeff?
But I say it's going to be via a different set of media, and you know, we've all got to admit that the way we consumed it when we were young won't be the way people consumed it now and in the future. We'll keep up with how people are consuming the information. There was a survey on Twitter, I think last week, and lectures and learning at university is now the bottom of how people learn about the past. Top is a TV and film, and then it's social media, and it comes next. And you know, YouTube, my kind of stuff is about halfway down the list, which is, at least I'm not at the bottom. But you know, books are not going to be the primary way forward unless they're part of this overarching thing. And it's what I get very frustrated when I hear from historian friends who they get contacted by a video game manufacturer and they say, I didn't even respond to the email. And I go, well, why not? You know, because they're going to make this game anyway. So if you can get involved, as John McManus has got involved in video games, for example, you know, it's not lowering yourself. It's not that you're, you know, no one's going to think you're not a proper historian if you're working on a video game. But you can maybe help influence how they portray things.
Well, it broadens the outreach. I mean, look at Marty Morgan, you
Yeah.
know, with what he does.
Jeff?
Exactly. So, you know, we're hogging the conversation now, but
Nah, Jeff, I keep seeing Jeff lean in. He wants to jump in. What's your thoughts on the whole book
I'm
thing,
sorry.
Jeff?
I know, I forgot I was here. No. Hey, you know, we take turns. This is Henry's guest, so I'm really enjoying being a listener for this one more than a co-host. But
Hey, when you had Patton on, I kept my mouth shut. So
right, so I'm returning the favor.
I'm sorry. I'll be quiet.
No, it's all good. But on the
So,
books, Jeff.
no, but really, so what I'm taking out of this conversation, you guys are saying what's exactly in my head. I mean, if we go back, you know, 80, 90 years to when the kids were reading Zane Grey, and then all of a sudden they've got a TV in their living room and they're laying there with their little 45 and their hat on watching Hopalong Cassidy and Clint Walker and John Wayne. That didn't mean that they put the books down, but it was just another way for them to relive what they're wanting to read about in the Old West. So now we're finding ourselves now I think it's a trifecta. You got to have the book. You got to be able to reach on the shelf and pull it out. And I think Adam Makos, an author we haven't really mentioned on this particular episode yet, but he's doing just that. You know, and Henry knows when you're reading Spearhead, you say, oh, at the bottom of the page, not at the end, at the bottom of the page, author's note. You can go to my website and see exactly this conversation that we had filmed. You know, you can see this. So that's a great way to do it. So we're gonna have books. You got to have some kind of video, audio, you know, that type of, you know, learning, because it enhances what the book can't do. You can't see it, you can't hear it. And then I think that the third part of the trifecta, and, you know, to me, maybe the most important part, because it's the one that the kids are going to remember, is that living history aspect. You know, Paul, you said it exactly right. When if a half track comes down the road, you know, in a parade, you know, a kid's going to remember that. They're not going to remember the first time they read about something or the first time they maybe saw it behind glass, but they're going to remember the first time they held it, you know. So if we can have that tactile part of history available, to me, it's a win-win. And I know, you know, that may be an abstract way of looking at it, like, oh, you know, video games, you know, kids don't read books anymore, they play video games. Well, maybe they're playing video games about guys storming the beach of Peleliu, and now they know who, people like, Henry's dad are, because they wouldn't be exposed. We're finding other avenues to get them there, to where they're going to get interested, and maybe they will do their own research and Google something, and then somebody's book will eventually come up. So, there's no such thing. They say good publicity or bad publicity is still publicity. Any way that we can reach, especially our youth, with history, do it. And like you said, they're going to make the video game anyway. You might as well be the guy that said, hey, this isn't right. They didn't have those there. It needs to be this. Instead of being the guy that's silly. They got that wrong. You had your chance to fix it. And that's what I personally strive for, is being able to be involved in as much ways that I can to make sure that, number one, it's done right. And number two, that it's as accessible as possible. It's not just go to your public library anymore, So I think it's all great things. Paul, I think what you're doing is amazing. I haven't seen your show, but I will. And I've been on the other end of doing webinars with guys like John McManus and Rich Frank. And it's this very, stern, everything's got to be perfect. The slideshow needs to work and everything's scripted. And it was great because, when we had John McManus a few episodes ago, it was like, hey, we're four guys that love World War II. You wear a t-shirt, it's cool. Let's just talk World War II. And we give those listeners the opportunity, like, wow, I because like you said, when you were a kid, you never dreamed that you would ever, have social media where you could send Tom Hanks a message. Like, who thought that would ever, seriously, like they were, you were lucky to get an autograph from a sports player, and that's a piece of them. But now we're so connected, and everybody has an opinion to throw out there. But when it's just humans being humans, and you may not say exactly how you wanted to say it if it was scripted, but that's the beauty of it. History's not going to change, but how we interpret it seems to always change and hopefully improve. So I love what you're doing.
But you said something cool about John McManus there, because to me, as a viewer of these things, it's cool to know that John McManus watches crappy war films like the rest of us. Because there's the gatekeepers of history, the proper people who write the books, who perhaps, a standard route kind of going is your PhD thesis then becomes your first book. That immediately, to people out there who know their stuff, sounds like, well, I haven't got that. I don't have that opportunity. And it's putting a gap between you as an amateur enthusiast for this and the so-called professional people. Then you realize that people like John McManus and James Holland and these guys, Richard Frank, they watch war films as well. They will watch and go, oh, look, he's got the wrong pattern leggings on, or look, his boots. But I do that. People think I do. It creates that connection there. And to Henry's question about will we be reading books, in some ways, the gatekeepers of the academic publishing world will have to understand, I think, that things like living history, comic book writing are as valid an interpretation and way of explaining World War II as these academic books. I mean, one of my big favorite writers is Garth Ennis, the comic writer, does The Boys, Punisher, and does Judge Dredd. His World War II graphic novel comics are amazing. The level of detail in them, in terms of the battles and how things were, and he tackles Eastern Front and the weirder grind. He's done stuff on the Spanish Civil War, but he's not going to get. He'll get invitations to the big Comic-Con things because that's what he does. But he wouldn't get invited to the World War II history stuff because they would be an understand that. But he's a comic book writer. Now the fact is, he may be engaging way more people and connecting to people and giving teenagers, whoever reads his World War II comics, I don't know, the Night Witches and the other ones, that page turning ability, that wanting to know what happens next, because there's no point historians producing these stuffy books that are inaccessible. I get them sent to me mercifully very few, that they're just unreadable.
Yeah.
Some of these things, that you just go, I can't be bothered to invest time in my life to reading this because I'm on page 10 and I'm bored already because you're aiming at some highbrow peer group type, impressing us with your knowledge. I want to know about guys running up beaches and how they felt and how that impact my life today, and they're not doing that. And most of them aren't like that, but a few of them are like that. It's just very frustrating.
Well,
No, absolutely, and I see it firsthand with my children too. You know, like Henry, I've got a 15-year-old son that just lives, eats, and breathes World War II. He's got a German bunker that he's built here on the ranch that him and his buddies are been hiding out at 11 o'clock last night, making videos. And they produce their own little videos and little movies. I mean, my son's writing a script right now about the irony of war between an American and a German soldier that paths crossed twice during World War II. These two young kids, the irony of war has kind of blended them together. And he's writing the script. He's filming it, mostly here on our ranch, and it blows me away.
Wow.
Like Henry said, the interest is there, and we want to. I'm proud to be of the generation that was at least not necessarily old enough to really personally know World War II veterans. When I think of a World War II veteran, he's 70 years old. For me, I'm a kid that grew up in the 80s and 90s. Going to air shows, they were old guys. They were still old guys, but they were now my dad's age. So I see, wow, they were actually quite young and energetic, and they had a lot of life left in them. And it's a shame that for like my children, we just saw a good World War II friend, buddy of ours, for the last time on New Year's Day. We visited him in the hospital before he passed. He was 97. That's a World War II vet to my son. It's a 97-year-old, not a 70, 75-year-old. So we know they're slipping past, but if we can keep them, like you said, keep them engaged in some way with comic books or with anything that keeps their memory alive, because man, we can't let it go.
Yeah.
We can't let it just fade off into the annals of history, and it's a dusty book on a shelf somewhere. And there was just too much given and too much blood and guts for it to slip away. And but I think we are, as much as we like to complain about the present and all these newfangled things, I don't think that's different in any time in history.
Right.
That newfangled wheel those guys got over there. I mean, it's how it is. We're fickle like that, but I think we're pretty fortunate in the time frame that we live in right now, because I would much rather, be in the 2020s than in the 1920s. That was a tough, our greatest generation's parents and what they had to endure. I'd much rather be where we're at now with all the trials and tribulations that we're going through, to live on the coattails of the greatest generation and to still be able to walk up and thank them and shake their hand. I don't know if it gets any better than that.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's interesting, taking off that, living in Normandy as I do, we were talking about my other half and me yesterday about the fact we're going to have to go across that hurdle of the veterans not being here. The 80th anniversary is fast looming, and I guess there'll be a couple of veterans here for that, but there won't be for the 85th, and there definitely won't be for the 90th. And how will that impact everything? And I think there'll be positives and negatives. I'm with you, Jeff. In a weird way, young people seeing really, really old guys under blankets in wheelchairs isn't helping them understand that the men who fought World War II were 19 years and 20 years old. You'd maybe need to see the veteran in the wheelchair and reenactors who are more likely to be nearer the right age.
Yeah, the 30 and 40-year-olds.
Tend to be a bit older, but to kind of connect the dots. So you go, hang on, they're old now, but they weren't old then. It's like, at what point are we going to stop interviewing the World War II generation as well? Because this is another big hot topic. At what point do personal testimonies and memory changes and things? At what point is there any value interviewing a 1990? I mean, some of them, sure, they were sharp as a tack, but handing over to the historians who've now got the historiography. You can look back and say, this veteran got it right. This veteran, maybe over the years, his story got a little bit woolly around the edges. And because for every Eugene Sledge, there's someone who didn't kind of quite write it in that same way. And so there's lots of hurdles we've got to face. There's the hurdles of how we're going to consume our history, and there's a hurdle about how we're going to deal with the passing of that greatest generation, which is going to provide us some positives and some negatives. And Marty Morgan, who mutual friend of ours, Marty's kind of almost looking forward to the era when there are no veterans there. That doesn't mean you're going to not miss all the friends you've made over the years, but because we can kind of clean the slate and say, let's start again, and now look at which testimonies are valuable and which ones perhaps aren't, and be more discerning about it. I get lots of emails, people saying, why don't you interview more World War II veterans on your channel? I've done, I think, 4 or something over the year.
It's hard to find them that are lucid.
And it's been done by other people better than me, and I don't feel that's what I want to do. I don't. It's been done. It's not for me.
Real quick on the book thing. Obviously, we need books, and a lot of the publishing houses, they will put an audio version of that book out at the same time. But I've said this on the podcast too. Fiction books, fine. Whatever. You want to self-publish, you want a digital format. History books, to me, is of utmost importance. We need hard copy because digital, anything's too easy to erase, to edit. Not to go too down the mire, but we here at the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, and actually any Facebook account associated with mine, we have 11 more days left of our Facebook jail because we had the audacity to post a photo of an author who was on our show in his German uniform, and I didn't censor out the swastika.
Oh, right.
And so because we're not a extremist group using that photo to get people to join our insanity, because we're a World War II history page and we posted a picture of a German in a uniform, the internet is censoring it. So to me, it's of utmost importance that authors continue to put out hard copy of these history books so that they can't be censored in that way.
Good point. Yeah.
And as you were saying, the video games, they're going to make them anyhow. As the way I see it, your kid going to play the game, and as we know with social media, their devices are monitoring them, watching them, and so if they're on these Facebook groups or whatever about Call of Duty, Google's going to sell that information, and as they're streaming through the old internet or on Instagram, World War II based themed stuff are going to pop up, and they might stop and say, hey, wait a minute, that looks like the guy I played on that video game. And out of 100 of them, maybe 4 will actually start researching and getting into World War II. And so definitely the games, and we see that in the living history world. Oh, the bandwagon of brothers. It's like, wait a minute. We're supposed to be here trying to get people to remember World War II. And the one series on HBO before the Pacific came out that did a fantastic job of introducing World War II to a bunch of people who had no interest in it, who basically did what you claim and you're trying to do. Now you refer to it as bandwagon of brothers. It's like, I don't get it. It's like anything that gets our normal counterparts, whether it's them flipping through the TV and stopping on the History Channel, back when they played history, and saying, wait a minute, that looks like from the scene from the movie. And if they sit there and watch it for 20 minutes, whereas 4 weeks ago they wouldn't have, to me, it's a bonus. It's a win.
Yeah. I think to balance that, though, I think we'll have to hope that the next generations have the ability to discern what's good and what's bad. And that's the thing. We know from a living history back, we can recognize good living history and we can recognize bad reenactment and we can see the difference, but some people can't. And the same with history as well, same with books, same with YouTube channels. It's that thing. And interesting about living history, because I live in where living history is the worst and the best at the same time, because Normandy for the anniversaries draws everybody, and I've seen some sites that just my eyes cry with the pain of what I see.
What would be that? Is it inaccuracy in the portrayal of the equipment, or
it's just the overall attitude, just the beards and
aviator glasses,
and just not actually showing respect. I sound like my dad now, but that understanding that for me, The minute you put a uniform on, you owe some kind of debt to those people who wore it. And sure, we can't all, reenactors can't all be 23 with a 32-inch waist. That's an impossible goal to reach. You can still be bigger or older, but do it with the right weight. It's the lack of care. And in Normandy, you're literally putting these uniforms on where the people who wore those uniforms originally actually died. You're literally going to the same places. And if that should elevate people's level of responsibility, and they just don't care. I mean, I say there's lots of good living history, and I know people think, oh, Woody doesn't like living history. I do like good living history, but I I abhor bad living history, and I'm not averse to going up and telling people they are being utter, and I will use some very naughty words because it just offends me now. It just and I say you're not doing anybody any favors, at least of all yourselves, because these historians I'm trying to engage with to try and come on and talk about reenactment, they've all seen this stuff as well. And the ones, we've already lost those. I don't think we're going to convert those historians to appreciating living history because they've made their decisions. They've seen such crap. But the next generation of historians, to go about this kind of broad front strategy, hopefully they will see the best of what's going on, and they'll see some of these interpretive displays at museums or events and things. Actually, living history can work as part of. I've been to some history festivals where a historian is talking, and there'll be reenactors there walking about on stage, showing the uniforms they're wearing. It's kind of a double act. It's helping to visually illustrate what they're talking about, and they can see the benefits from both sides, but a lot of it is so poor here. And I don't do it so much now because I get so angry in my blood pressure, but I used to on Facebook around June post the reenactor idiot of the day photos, and people would be Brian Dimitrovich would be waiting for me to post some idiot, and I stopped doing it now because it just became a sport.
These are the guys with the beard. The uniform is 3 sizes too big. They're wearing sneakers. They're they put on the bare minimum. They got their cell phone holster on their hip. It's bad.
It's something to do with the attitude. It is the gear, but it's the way they stand wanting themselves to be the center of attention and look at me, which is that's what I don't like. It's why. I mean, there's times you should be looking. I mean, when I used to do mostly British living history, a bit of American. 84th Division Rail Splitters was the American unit I did, but mostly British. 1st Airborne Reconnaissance Squadron at Arnhem, and we were asked to parade the standard at the annual Veterans Reunion and things like that. So we were part of working with the veterans. And that was really cool. And they said, no, you be at the front with your uniform. And we go, no, you be at the front. We'll be beside you or behind you. But we'd balance it there. But yeah, Normandy and living history and reenactment is just it's you could do a special on that one day about because whatever you think you've seen, I've seen it worse. I've seen it way worse, and sometimes shocking.
Yeah, I'll show up at events and it's like, why didn't you shave? Because beards are in style. Well, you'll grow it back in 3 days. Just you put in all the time, energy, and effort. Make sure you have the right uniform, and then I can't bother to shave for 3 days. It's like, come on. It's just minor stuff. It just drives everybody nuts. Real quick.
They do have the photo, of course. They always have that one example. They've always got that. But here's a photo from New Guinea in 1943 with a guy who had just what I've got. And you go, yeah, okay,
yeah,
sure.
Except for his uniform's dirty and full of holes, and yours is brand new, clean, and crisp, and straight out of an Amazon box. Yeah. So if you have access to a clean uniform, you have access to a razor. Real quick, I'm curious. When did you move to Normandy? And get involved in all this, not to go too far back.
So 21 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you move there primarily for the mission of getting into battlefield guides, or did you just get there for a different reason and fall into this?
I'll just say yes, but it was more of a kind of again, I didn't really have a plan. It was like, at the time, I was like, I'm bored with what I was doing.
Normandy sounds fun.
Kind of. I've been coming here since I was 12 years old, and I thought I'll better do something there because I've done voluntary work in museums. I've done a bit of tour guiding, done some work as a film extra. I was in Saving Private Ryan, things like that as an extra, all those kind of things. And I thought I'll better find something, and in the end I did, and I founded my own company. I had staff working for me, but again, when I look back on it, it looks like it was more planned than it actually was. It was much more random, but so far most things things I've done have ended up working out okay. So it's yeah, got a good kind of sixth sense or something, I suppose.
Before we wrap it up, do you have any plugs you want to get in there? You got any events coming up or anything you want to shine some light on?
Not specifically. I mean, we're carrying on plugging away on World War II TV. So this week we're in the middle of Armored Actions. So we were Spanish Civil War today. Tomorrow we're 3rd Armored Division, the Battle of Bulge with Daniel Bolger, retired American general. Then we got Prit Butard talking about the 6th Panzer group in Ukraine. And then we've got Australians, we've got Stuart tanks in New Guinea. And then the week after that, got some random shows. We're doing some stuff about the anniversaries of Singapore, because this year, where last year I wasn't always tying in with anniversaries, this year I'm thinking, okay, it's the 80th of the 42 event, so I'm trying to tie in.
Nice.
So Operation the Steal the Radar at Bruneval, Operation Biting, I'm covering that. I'm covering the fall of Singapore on the anniversary, covering the invasion of Madagascar on the anniversary this year. So a whole lot of things where kind of on the day, 80 years on comes this story, and we're talking about the event that was happening then. So that's kind of, just go to my YouTube channel and look at what I'm doing. Because I do everything live, I only ever have about 2 weeks worth of shows that are future listed, and then I kind of add each week as I get towards it. But I've got shows planned now. Pretty much all my weeks are planned till May, June,
Nice.
maybe. So lots of stuff coming up.
Jeff, you?
Well, we're just plugging along in my little museum and our renovations. I look forward to showing that off and our air show coming up in March. And I just wanted to do a quick mention on a book that I'm just about through with. I try to have one done, before we have an episode to talk about a book. And this it's not much to look at. In fact, I don't even have it next to me. It's just called Air Gunner. It's a book I picked up years ago, just because it's a first edition print. It was printed in 1944, so the war is still going on, and it's by none other than Sergeant Andy Rooney that penned this book. And it is. I mean, I understand that reaction. It's not the sarcastic Andy Rooney you may expect or negative in any way. He was quite a comedic kind of guy. He had his own kind of comedy, but. No, this is dedicated to air gunners. This has nothing to do with pilots or bombardiers. This is just the gunners, and it's really, really well done. And I'll share just a real quick story, something that I had learned. The term paddle feet. I had never heard of all the stuff I've read about the Air Corps, the bombing campaign. I've never heard the term paddle feet, and it basically translates to today's. If you call somebody a pogue, person other than a grunt, or a REMF that we use in the Army, rear echelon, you can finish the rest. Basically guys that aren't on the front lines. So, and I don't know if it was Army-wide or if it was just kind of for the Air Corps, these bomber bases, but there was a story about a waist gunner that just quit on his 9th mission. He was flak happy. He just simply couldn't quit. He couldn't do it anymore. And it was something that happened on the mission before. And it just kind of caught up with him in the air during this 9th mission. And he just swore to God, if this airplane lands, he's never getting in the air again. So he does. And of course, the Air Corps goes to the proper challenge. He was a good guy. He'd done a lot of stuff, had some kills, but they had to ground him. The Air Force had to ground him. The very next mission, his aircraft goes out with a brand new left waist gunner to replace him, and it doesn't come back. And naturally, he wanted to go back into the air. Sorry, you had your chance. But the interesting thing about it was that the whole crew thought that we're all going through the same stuff, man. We all see this, and you're going to quit. You're going to leave us after 9 missions. But then when one of the paddle feet caught wind, now all of a sudden his tail gunner, stood up for him, because somebody that's never been in the air is trying to, kind of dog on him. So I thought it was interesting. And that, that's stuff that happens in today's military. The guys that are next to you, we can jack with you a little more than somebody who's never been there. But it's really interesting. So each chapter is a little bit different about it. And he covers all these guys. Some are actual, uses actual names. Some he says, these aren't the real names, but these are the real stories. And it's just interesting. It's just a really neat look. It gets you right inside the Quonset hut with these waist gunners and tail gunners and ball turret gunners in B-17s and 24. So if you're looking for something like that, if that's your thing, Air Gunner by Sergeant Andy Rooney.
I'll have to check that out. What about you, Henry?
As far as books, I finished Sherrod's book, or Robert Sherrod's book, History of USMC Aviation in World War II. And I just started Samuel Eliot Morrison's Coral Sea Midway and Submarine Actions.
You got any appearances or anything you need to get out there?
Yeah, I think there's another We Happy Few 506 coming up with Leighton and Matt Leach. They want to do a Peleliu show, a Zoom show, and then they want to have me on their podcast. So with my wife's father passing away earlier this week, we got kind of messed up on when we were going to do that.
Sure.
But that'll be coming up. And Woody, I think you're having me back on your show soon at some point.
Yeah, we're going to go do your father's footsteps across Peleliu. That'll be good. A lot of great feedback about your first experience. So yeah, first appearance that's coming up. And I love all this this networking. And I know Leighton and Matt. I've had beers with Matt in Normandy, and yeah. I love the connections. And incidentally, down the road from me in Normandy is a chateau that was used by the press corps, and Andy Rooney's signature is on the wall there. So I've stood
cool
beside his signature on the wall there. Yeah, it's wonderful how all these stories combine.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's going to wrap it up for this episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. I would be remiss. We reminded everybody last week, but Jeff so vehemently demanded that we start an Instagram page for the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. So you can find us on Instagram at WTSP World War II, and Jeff and I have been trying to manage that, but there's some technical nonsense going on in the background we won't get into. And as always, if you really like the show and want to support what we're doing, do us two favors. One, head over to youtube.com and subscribe to the Digital 410. You can watch all of our live stream and plus see all the videos we put up. And furthermore, go to WTSPWorldWar2.com and click on that Patreon link. Sign up for Patreon. It only costs you $1 a month. If you kind of like us, if you like us, it's like the old episode of The Wonder Years. If you like us, sign up for the OG5 plan, which is $3.50 a month. And if you effing love us, choose the long arm deep pocket plan at $7.50 a month. And after month number 2, you will find yourself getting a message from yours truly asking you what size shirt you want, what kind of shirt you want, and we will hook you guys up. But for myself, Jeff, Henry, and Paul, we want to thank each and every one of you for your continued interest in World War II, because without you, well, we'd all just be crazy guys sitting in a room talking about stuff no one wants to hear about. So until next week, thank each and every one of you, and we will talk to you all soon.
This has been a Digital 410 production.